Um, so this is sort of how we structured it on Monday, and we'll start with this, which is I asked everyone to just briefly share what congregation they were from and currently what they're doing in regards to worship. Just a short, brief sentence or two about whether you're doing virtual or hybrid. Um, just to give us a sense of where you're all coming from. So I can start, and then we'll invite each other then to share then. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Casey Carbone, the pastor at the First Presbyterian Church in Mahopac, now serving also as the Hudson River Presbytery IT communications facilitator. And currently in our congregation, we are worshiping we were worshiping hybrid in person, outdoors and virtually, and for the next couple of weeks we will be worshiping only virtually as we consider what the fall looks like and what we may discern is what's best for our current congregation. So I would invite, just because he popped up first for me, Martin, I'd invite you to share what's going on.
Thanks, Casey. We are streaming only right this moment with this huge technology of my phone. And we will, although we've gotten our equipment from the Presbytery grant, and on October 4th, we will be reopening minimally and begin that Sunday with a hybrid service, whatever that will look like.
Would you like to invite someone next, Martin, or I can call on someone?
Dorinda's next to me on my Brady Bunch grid, so go ahead, Dorinda.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Dorinda from Denton Presbyterian. That's just west of Middletown out in Orange County. Last Sunday was our first Sunday that we met in person. We're also doing hybrid. We have done strictly Zoom, since the beginning of March. We don't cast it anywhere. It's just, that's where it is. But that has worked really well for the sake of being able to communicate and interact, sharing and leadership with readers and such. So this last Sunday, we used Zoom and had some show, come to the sanctuary. And luckily, the Zoom went without a hitch. That was, I think, what I was most nervous about. And we did, as Casey said, we we have screens in the sanctuary. So we put those who were on Zoom up on the screen when we weren't using the screen for other things. And there was a phone pointed out towards the sanctuary so those on Zoom could see people coming in. And we were also very intentional about bringing a camera so they could see people at the door and what it looked like for them to get seated, so those could get a feel of what it would be like. So it went well. I invite Erin.
Hi, good morning. I'm Erin Moore. I'm the pastor at Chester Presbyterian Church, and we are doing a hybrid model. We, the start of September, started worshiping outside, and so we are live streaming that to folks. And so it's been interesting. We've had some technology issues, mostly with our sound equipment, but it's been going okay. I invite Lynn.
Hi, I'm Lynn Brown, and I'm in Pleasant Valley outside of Poughkeepsie. We are fully on Zoom right now still. October 4th, we will start with three or four of us Zooming from the sanctuary just to work, and we'll have that for the month of October. With the possibility of going back somehow in November, but that depends on what happens to the schools and colleges, I would say. So that's where, so it's slow. We've, there seems to be a great understanding that we're going to continue to Zoom from the sanctuary. So there's a willingness to spend some money on the We don't have any kind of video. We have a pretty good audio system, but just audio, just inside. So they're already working on upgrading the wireless in the building, which is great. And but we I think I had people that would have been ready to spend $10,000 and the quote was 20. So we haven't taken a hard look at that yet and broken it down to see what it included. But it's that big firm that does that for churches. I don't know, it begins with an M or something. So that's where we're at. I'll call on Izette.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lynn. I'm Izette Lipton from Hitchcock Church, and initially we started out worshiping via Zoom, both live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. At the end of August, we began continuing live streaming YouTube and Zoom, and in worship in the building, socially distanced. This past Sunday, Rally Day, we offered 2 services, one outside on the patio, socially distanced, and a second one later in the sanctuary, again, socially distanced, all still while on Zoom, live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. And I suspect we'll continue that model in some way moving forward. I'll call on Kevin.
Sorry. Okay, I'm the clerk of Smithfield Church. We have been live streaming on Zoom for months now. We're grateful for the Presbytery grant that helped with some of the technology, the installation of wireless and some equipment. We have been quite successful with the Zoom, and we've been attracting people from New York City and even in a few cases other countries who have come to the church at one point in their history, but are now away. Moving forward, though, we are going to experiment with a hybrid Zoom. We'll be open. The sanctuary will be open on October 4th for World Communion Sunday. And we'll be working on the kinks of working that out. We maybe have to get a screen. I guess my main question is whether a screen or a moving iPad, if anybody has tried that, say for like Joys and Concerns, for somebody to take that around. Has anybody tried that particular approach to a hybrid service?
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, and we'll certainly get, I think, to that question as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I'm finished. Denise, could you say something? Denise is the music director of Smithfield Church.
Oh, I think you're muted, Denise.
Expert as I am at running the Zoom service since before Easter. I've been running the Zoom service from home on my computer at Smithfield, where Kevin is from. He is our clerk of council. And we've used an iPad connected to the computer to show things as visuals, such as the program that people would have picked up coming in the door. We listened to hymns. I put up a video of the actual score for the hymn. We have a somewhat elaborate miking and unmiking, muting and unmuting system because we have about 40 participants on a Sunday. We found that with the lag on Zoom, it was hard for all of us to sing together. So we shut everybody down for singing of the hymns, but we turn everybody back on for the Our Father for the joys and concerns for the call to service. And it is cacophonous for people who are tuned in by phone, but it's an effort to have a more real feeling and to connect with one another. We've used videos from YouTube for postludes and preludes, which people like. We've had a coffee hour now for a few weeks, which means we grab a cup after the service is over and we talk to each other. This week I'm putting up pictures of our congregation as school children, which seems to go over well. A picture parade after the service. We're doing really well with Zoom, but we, as Kevin said, we're going to experiment going to a hybrid service on October 4th. And we will certainly have Zoom going as it ever was, but we're looking to see today how people are handling camera work within the church to communicate out and then again in. And I'm finished, and I would like to call on Hudson River Presbytery.
Oh, that's Deb.
Oh, that is me. Thank you for
That's
calling
what it
on me
says.
now. Because we spent so much time just doing our Zoom, preparing for our Zoom Presbytery meeting on Tuesday. It's a little different for 150 people than it is otherwise. But thank you very much. And how about Jonathan? Jonathan, you're welcome.
Yeah,
Brand
welcome,
new.
Jonathan.
I'll jump right in. Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan. I'm from Monroe, First Pres Monroe. This is going to be my third Sunday. So, and I've only been a pastor in the pandemic for 3 weeks now. So I'm just jumping in and learning. So I don't have a lot of specific questions. Just want to be part of the discussion and see what the questions are, really. We've been doing Zoom since April, I think, maybe even March. And it's really been based in someone's home. And last week, our music director and I got together and we did Zoom from the sanctuary. It was a lot easier as far as music is concerned. The quality of the music was better broadcasting on Zoom when you're together. And so this week, actually, we're going to do a small reopening, and we're going to invite some people to come. And we're following all the guidelines. We've been communicating to the congregation, and so we're going to be doing Zoom. Then we're just trying to figure out what other formats we can add to that, and platforms such as Facebook Live or some way of recording, not just the whole Zoom screen, but just the people who will be participating as leaders in the service to be able to then post that. I had one guy in our congregation was had a great idea to try to project everybody who's on Zoom on the wall so that they feel like they're part of the congregation, and likewise, and vice versa. So we're going to try something like that and see how that goes. I don't remember. I think he got the idea from the Democratic Convention at the end of, when they're like waving to the people on the wall. I thought that was really creative. So we're gonna try something like that, and we'll see how it goes.
You'll have to connect with Dorinda then, because she just mentioned how at her church they broadcasted the people on Zoom up on a projector screen.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're thinking about. Yeah, where's Dorinda? I gotta know who she is.
She's in one of the Brady Bunch squares here, Dorinda.
Okay, all right.
So we'll do Marjorie, Cliff, and then Jennifer. Nice to see you also. So we'll start with Marjorie, then move to Cliff, and end with Jennifer.
Hi, I'm at Wappingers Falls Presbyterian Church, and we have actually not been doing any online presence since the shutdown happened. We were doing I was writing up like printed bulletins and either emailing or mailing them to people's homes. And then we did our reopening way earlier than everyone else. And we are back in person in worship. We are actually practicing with recording the services on our newly purchased technology from our grant from the Presbytery. And so far, nobody has really embraced the editing and posting and sending it around and all of that task. So we need to kind of prompt that next step. We had a session meeting last night and started, opening dialogue about, given that this is our new normal for at least a year, we need to move out of crisis mode and into long-term thinking. So we started talking about what that might look like, which is one of the major reasons why I'm sitting here, because I have next to zero technical skills for doing things like editing movies and posting them. So I need to really figure out what it is that people want in the congregation, and then how we can make all of this happen, particularly as we approach holidays. That was a concern for people about how do we move forward with holidays and have it feel festive. So that's where we are. Let's see, Cliff, did you go yet?
Hello, everyone. Yes, we've at the end of June, we began worshipping in the sanctuary, and we tried various cameras and versions of recording, and we had struggled at first to upload our worship. We struggled with the GoPro, which we've kind of ditched. We struggled with somebody's iPod, was using the wrong format, iPad. So we've gone to the simplest technology, which is an iPhone, and doing Facebook Live. And apart from little orientation problems, because sometimes it ends up on its side, and once we flipped it around, we flipped the words on the screen round so it was a mirror image, and nobody could read it at home, because we didn't realize that it kind of reversed the image. So but now we've got it right. We've got it up the right way around, and we're managing to improvise. It's a bit tricky with the mobile phone on the tripod, because we rather than use the little handle to turn the camera at the phone, we just physically turn the tripod round towards the preacher and then back to the screen. And so we're kind of like, it's kind of basic, but it works. We get comments and views from Scotland and from further afield, but it's hard to know. And like Casey said before, if just because you've got 50 or so many views doesn't mean to say people stay with you for the whole worship service. So unless people give comments, we don't know if people are engaging with the worship. So we're still kind of like wary about patting ourselves on the back, but we're muddling through. And recently, as a result of our Holy Cow discussions, somebody's granddaughter is stepping up to not only offer to play her violin along with to accompany the hymns, but also to operate the camera if we get around to purchasing it with the Connection grant. Oh, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Cliff. So I'm at First Presbyterian Church of Ossining, and we have been doing Zoom since March. Then we started worshiping in the parking lot. We still are worshiping in the parking lot. And we connect so we're having 2 services right now, 10 o'clock in person in the parking lot, 11 by Zoom. And we go live on Facebook through Zoom. At this moment, that's the way that works better for us. We don't know. That will be decided when we're going back inside the building. That will be next month. We're not sure yet, if that's happening or no. But at least the way, because people from the congregation, they don't have, technological skills. So for them, the good thing about Zoom is that if they cannot, have a, they don't have a computer, they can phone in, so they can be connected with that. And so far that works with us. So it's still, seeing what will next step will be, next month. So that's for my part, and I'm not sure who had, because I came late. I don't know who has.
No worries. Kathy, did you want to briefly say hello and say where you're from and what your church is currently doing in terms of worship?
Sure. I'm at All Souls Parish in Port Chester. We are video recording our worship right now because my folks can't negotiate Zoom for the most part. So we're talking about a possible outdoor service for a little while, but that's it for us.
Thanks, Kathy. So, I hearing a lot of what's been shared, I think one of the interesting questions to ask ourselves is that, 6 or more months ago, back in March, did any of us possess the skills that we currently possess in terms of ministering or doing outreach in a pandemic? And I truly believe that even if it's been 6 months ago now, if you feel now that you still don't have much in terms of technological skills, I wouldn't be surprised if those skills were exponential compared to 6 months ago, because who would have thought that we were doing this? I think really based off of what we've heard on Monday in terms of virtual and hybrid worship, or what we've heard today, whether it's doing virtual, hybrid, in person, or even finding alternative means of providing materials for folks, such as doing a paper or an version of a service, or doing 2 services, one in person, one a virtual service. I think all these things hit home at really what is at the heart of our attempt in doing these services, which is to provide that connection with the people who are in our communities and in our congregations. That it's not necessarily about the production value or the polish of a virtual service, but it's truly, I think, how we choose to engage with people virtually. I think some of the most hopeful and inspiring conversations were also ones that were mentioned on Monday, where folks talked about how they would do a live stream with just an iPhone, and fuddle around with the various orientations, but they receive comments or messages from folks who, even if it's just a live video stream from their church Facebook page, the way that they crafted a service that could work for in person or virtual was meaningful. And I think that's just really the important point for all of us during this, is that as we consider what it means to provide these different worshiping experiences, that it's how we craft the way that we do church. So for a lot of the folks, for you here, or for some of your other colleagues, I'm sure that that they do get more engagement, or people feel more connected if they're preaching in a way that's maybe more engaging than how we would traditionally preach, of just doing I don't know how preach typically 15, 17 minutes, and but read it, doing a sermon manuscript wouldn't necessarily translate to doing a hybrid or a truly virtual service. So hearing how folks have found ways to insert questions or encouraging people to share their thoughts in worship on chat, things that I think we've seen other worshiping bodies do in the past who maybe were utilizing this more, but for us now it's the question of how we use all these things. And so like what Kevin was saying in terms of how they've been bringing people around their congregation with another iPad or a camera to seat people, or sort of like what Dorinda was saying also. I think you were saying, Dorinda, about how you move people around the sanctuary and how they're seated. I think that truly is more important than trying to put on something that's polished. And I think the other question I think we wrestle with is the difficulties of balancing some of the creativity aspects of virtual worship compared to in-person or hybrid worship, because I don't know exactly what all of you've been doing in terms of these services, but I imagine that there's things that you could do. Well, I'm thinking Kathy, for example, who's been able to take folks around a virtual tour of all these state parks in her virtual services, which isn't something you can do if you're doing a hybrid or an in-person service. And even thinking about I know, Marjorie, you mentioned that you have the technology right now, but the question is, I think, also volunteers and what kind of energy we have for things. For those who are worshiping outdoors and trying to stream that also, having done it for the summer, my recommendation for folks is don't try to worry about setting up a whole live stream setup as well if you're the only one doing it, because it's a lot. And so I think it's really balancing what we have energy for, but it's knowing what we have energy for at this moment now, while also just truly focusing in on those key connectional pieces, and the other flash and shine can come later on if you have volunteers who step up. But so I don't know, those are some of my thoughts, I think, based off of the conversations that we had, and on Monday, and some of what we've heard today from folks. And so it sounds like, though, there's a lot of, as sort of an outside look, it sounds like there's a lot of different ways in which our congregations here on Hudson River Presbytery have been finding ways to connect with people still, whether it be in their congregations or people who are across the ocean and Scotland, Scotland even. But I don't know. I think I don't know. Those are just some thoughts I had, at least, on that. Dorinda, I don't mean to tap you again, but it seems like there have been folks who are interested in how you projected the Zoom screen onto your or Zoom onto your on your projector screen. So I don't know if you have anything to offer on that.
I can speak as best as I know, is that I was not the one doing the projection. I have, I'm fortunate to have one of our leaders she does all of our, the call to worship and the scripture verses and things on a PowerPoint slide. And she then shares our screen when we were doing just Zoom. But in our church, we have the soundboard and 2 computers set up in the back. I don't know how to do that, but it gets projected up onto the screen that's in the sanctuary. So my understanding is that on one computer, she had the easy worship slides, and on the other, she opened the Zoom meeting. So she was able to change from one computer to another on what was being projected. Having not actually pressed those buttons, I'm not sure, but I believe that's how it was, is that She also had a Zoom meeting opened on her personal phone so she could see what the people at home were seeing. But that enabled for the people at home to have a shared screen with what was happening in worship. And then when there wasn't things of words and whatnot being shared on the screen, she could project the Zoom participants to the screen. So it had to do with the 2 computers in the back of the church. Does that sound? I think that's how it happened.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like you had multiple Zoom devices.
We did.
And that would be example, something I wouldn't attempt unless you had some other folks. But it does also sound like it sounds also like what some other folks here have shared with how they've already been using Zoom. Again, I think Kevin and Denise, you said, for example, I think how you had different devices that you were using to show different angles. So, I mean, it's adapting, just using Zoom as this, you can use it as this multi-camera platform.
And Casey, if I can just add, what I'm so grateful for is that I have someone who is managing the Zoom meeting. But before, we shared the responsibilities of letting people in, and now I have my laptop on the pulpit instead of here at my desk, and I will look at the chat when she's doing other things, but she really manages it now. And it has taken it gives me the ability to engage with who's on than having to worry about chats and letting people in and those kinds of things. So I would encourage to train someone to help you out. I've been very grateful for that.
I was wondering, Dorinda, if you had problems with feedback with using multiple devices.
We had to mute all the devices and turn the volume down on my computer. And I would only unmute when I was speaking. So we did a few practice runs with multiple devices just to kind of figure out where things needed to be placed. And like I said, this last Sunday was only our first one, but we did start the service with, please, raise your hand if you have feedback. Please put something in the chat. We just just move through the service, checking in with everybody at home at each point. So there was much grace in it really did go okay. I think some of those practice runs, but it's figuring out what needs to get muted when.
That is the wormhole potentially of Zoom that I found when I've tried experimenting with multiple devices is you start getting feedback and you try to track down where that feedback's coming from until all your devices are on mute and you're like, I still don't know what's happening. So from what it sounds like, though, it sounds like there are people who are worshiping strictly virtual still. It sounds like there's some of you who are worshiping in person, but and you're not worshiping virtually. And then it sounds like there's folks who are in this in between of working on what comes next. And I think sort of the great thing, I think the thing that may be helpful for those who are in the in-between zone is I think maybe just even, I think for us, it's even just perhaps even when we return to the sanctuary at some point, even just starting out with Zoom, something that's as simple as maybe having a device or two that if you wanted to have set up for a reader or a speaker and practicing that, just because by now maybe we're all experts with Zoom, or maybe not, but no. But yeah, I mean, and I think the things that we all struggle with as well currently is that, if we find that we are in a congregation or in a context where is that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I think the hard part is that, if we're in a situation or if we're in a congregation or if we're in a context where there is no one to help, that is something that's draining. And it's something that that I think takes work in terms of finding ways to balance that creativity with doing this kind of worship, but also saying it's okay if something doesn't happen, which for me is something that I know for myself, it's something I personally wrestled with, because I do like to have things a certain way, but to realize that it's just not possible to do alone, or to without assistance, it just becomes too difficult. But I don't know, are there questions that people have that perhaps based off of what you've heard others share about what's going on in their congregations, that you may want to ask, and we'll see if we can maybe do a little brainstorming with each other. I see Denise's hand. She raised her hand.
I've noticed some of you have mentioned Facebook, and I'm wondering if you could give me some details about how you're using Facebook. I can tell you that probably a good part of our congregation do not subscribe to Facebook. So just a briefing on how you're including that.
I won't presume to speak for everyone, but in our church we stream to Facebook and we stream to YouTube, and it's really, for us, we found it's just another way for people to watch a service or connect in some way, whether it be sharing, participating in the live chat that goes on Facebook, or throwing emojis into the chat. It's just another. It's an alternative, and I think if you're using Zoom, you could live stream to Facebook also via Zoom.
Okay, I'll look into that. Thank you.
Martin, I see that you're using the raise hand function in Zoom.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, Denise, didn't you say you were Zooming already? And I was just going to report, we're only using Facebook Live, which is extraordinarily simple. And I had tried to do a hybrid, and to Casey's point a few minutes ago about not doing more than you can do, it seemed a little more than I could do right at that moment. So we just settled on Facebook Live, and now it took me months. And now I kind of feel like I've got the energy to see if we can upgrade a little bit. It's great if you're on Facebook, but it is true that you don't have to be on Facebook in order to log on and see it. However, Facebook makes it really hard to ignore their prompts to say what your account is. And if you're not very tech savvy, you will think you have to have an account. And Facebook really makes it hard. So you kind of have to know what you're doing to get in. And if you don't have an account, then you don't know what you're doing. So it's a catch-22.
Thank you.
We actually stopped sending the Zoom meeting over to the worship service over to our church's page because of privacy concerns. I don't really want to shut down the conversation and the prayers and the sharing with my family-sized church, because that's what's keeping them connected. But it just felt like putting some of that stuff out there, so yeah, but then so what I've started doing is we have a group that's called the Pleasant Valley, worshiping community. Like, we'll let anybody in, but you tell us what a regular worshiper means to you. So I've been throwing it there. So at least then we know the people that are in the group, but then you lose the advantage of being on Facebook, so it's kind of that push-pull of, so we haven't gotten anybody from Scotland. I mean, we have we have more worshipers, but they're people who weren't able to join us for one reason or another, whether it was illness or age or distance. We've got a lot of those people coming every week, which is amazing. It's because it is more people, but it's not new people. New people will become a problem at some point if we can't start meeting in person. You know, what new person in the age of COVID is going to go looking for a church? What unchurched person is going to go looking for a church?
Lynn, you know what we've gotten, and Cliff may reiterate this, we've gotten a few new people, but they have been referred by some of our regulars who say, oh, you should really try this.
Yeah.
You might find it accessible. So we have gotten one or two, but I'll tell you what, you probably won't necessarily get people in from Scotland. I think if you listen to Cliff's voice, you'll see why. I have to say, if you listen to me long enough, you'll know why I'm getting people from Arkansas.
And can I just say that, yeah, I think the viewers from overseas are not, for me, they're not real. It's not real. We can't sort of like count them as, you know, part of the congregation in terms, you know, it's good that they're worshiping somewhere, but we're not going to really get the benefit of them in the future, I don't think, unless they move, and I don't think they're going to move. But no, I was, and funnily enough, I was out buying whiskey last night, not for myself, but for somebody who I owed a thank you, and of course it was malt whiskey. But anyway, the guy in the liquor store, I said to him, you know, I was telling him, you know, he says, oh, you're from Scotland. I said, and I said, oh, you're from England. But he was looking. He was saying, oh, I've not been to church for ages. So which church, you know? So he just might sort of like start coming along, because people crave that contact. And I reassured him that, you know, we're social distancing. We've got masks and sanitizer, and we're not meant to sing, and even though some people do, and we're there. So he said he might come along, but I've heard that before. You know, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, you know, I would just add also, you know, we've had some new people stop in as well, and it's sort of picking up on some of that self-plugging or self-promotion that you find on people who do YouTube as a job, where they encourage you to like, share, subscribe. But you know, it really has been, you know, at the top of our worship, even for the hybrid, you know, I'll look right into the camera, talk to the folks who are watching at home, and say, you know, yeah, you can, if you're a member, it's never been easier to invite someone to church before. And you know, yeah, we've had folks who've hosted watch parties of our live services while it's happening, and they'll then watch with their friends each week. And so it's been interesting. It's been interesting to see how people are, still, well, people who might not have invited people to church before are finding ways to share now. Martin, you don't have to raise your hand, Martin.
Well, I thought it was the virtual you didn't like. No, I have a question on a different topic. During virtual streaming, I have specifically avoided any prayer concerns. I don't mention anybody by name. And just because I feel it's very different from doing it in the sanctuary to putting it out online for anybody from Scotland to see it. I've already gotten questions about it as we look at going to hybrid. What are you going to do about prayer requests? And I said, I'm not going to have any. But I hear some of you are doing that, and I was just curious how that was going for you, and if there was any hesitancy.
Well, I guess we should ask also who's sharing prayer requests and streaming to a public platform that's not Zoom, because I think there's a difference between doing prayer requests in a private Zoom call and doing prayer requests for the public on Facebook.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
So
my concern right from the very beginning was to almost create, even though I've done everything from right here, is to create the feeling of the same service, so that people feel like they've been to church. So it's the same, I just slowly built up so that it's the same order of worship and the things like that are so important of the sharing, which is why what we've done is just gone to try to increase the privacy instead of not taking the prayer request. So we don't, we have all, it took me 3 months or 4 months, but I do have Zoom ushers now. They're actually teachers who are Zooming themselves. So as soon as people got used to Zoom, then people, but I'm very fortunate. So we have them change all of the names so that you take out all of the last names, because it has happened that, if you do go over to Facebook, I don't know, I can't figure it out. Sometimes you get the gallery view, sometimes you get the speaker view, spotlight view, I don't know. But so sometimes we've had, like, on a Facebook page, like, people's phone numbers, and last names. So, it was just starting to be more sensitive and then explaining it. So, that's the side that we erred on, was increased privacy to allow people to continue to have the intimacy they would have had in church.
yeah, I saw Jennifer mention that in the chat that they've done prayer requests by Zoom and live stream, and it's included, generic prayer requests. She says, like, the world, health, government, etc. For us at Mahopac, we've also done prayer requests, and people have shared prayer requests, though as part of the live stream card for that, we say to just share a first name. And if they do share a prayer request, if they want to share more for our prayer list, they can, we have our church administrator's email address up, not their personal one, but the office email address for them to send it to. I think it's just, and that's what I found out has been a good balance for our church. I know that's, and I think for everyone, it's finding the balance of that privacy and what works for their current context. Yeah, that is the hard part about Zoom, that if you do stream public to Facebook, you don't want to be doxing people by putting their phone numbers out there in public for people to see. Yeah. Were there any other questions or anything you else wanted to brain source from each other?
I have a question, and I know that there's some been, but because we haven't done it, I'm just thinking about how we're going to do it. So I've heard that it's hard to have multiple devices in the same sanctuary, in the same space, tuned into the same Zoom meeting. So there was one of you that said that when you went back in the sanctuary, which is our next step, the 3 of us going back in the sanctuary, that the music came out better. What is the setup that you need to do? Like, do we do one Zoom meeting? How like, if we have somebody, running the Zoom meeting, sitting out there, and the organist and what do I need to have? What works well?
I think, well, I see is that, and then maybe Jonathan after that, because I think Jonathan mentioned that also. So we could start with Izette there, though.
So I can't necessarily tell you what works, but I know at Hitchcock, it was trial and error for several Sundays until they got the right combination. So,
yeah,
I'm not certain if it has to do with the type of equipment you have. So if what works for us may not necessarily work for you, but if you'd like, because we have a tech team, thank goodness. And I can put you in touch with, some of them, and maybe they can, assist you in some way, if that would be helpful.
It's probably more than, I mean, at this point, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, instead of doing my Zoom meeting here, I'm just going to take this into the church.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm going to focus on the Zoom people, because that's going to be the larger, and I'm going to just let the other people work around me. If it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And we'll figure it out. I can't do it all.
Yeah.
I can't.
Agreed. Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, if you have anything to add, because I think you mentioned, and then I saw Dorinda's hand also.
Yeah, the only thing that I've been part of 2 churches where Zoom and the music director was at home on a piano or like a electric piano, something like that. It was always, the quality of the music wasn't as good because they were trying to stream from their phone or something like that. It was just, it always had some kind of lag to it. And just being in the same room with your music director, especially like a full organ, just even the ambient sound of the organ on the microphone was much, much better. And you could communicate directly with your music director instead of having to like sit there and go, okay, all right, George, you're going to play now. It's not coming through. Okay, no. All right. We're going to go to the next thing now until George gets his everything. And it was, what, everybody, I think a lot of people have been there, right? But it was a lot easier. So what we did also is we had some people at church who just, they had a direct connection from the organ and the mics into a soundboard, then into Zoom, and mixed it there. And that improved things immensely. So that's the only thing. And just be able to like look at your music director and go, okay, let's go. We got it.
Yeah.
All right. And this, it's a lot easier and a lot. So.
I would interject quickly before I'll call on Dorinda, is that Zoom also, if you didn't know this already, Zoom has a feature called Original Sound. And if you just Google Zoom Original Sound, you'll find the walkthrough on how to set that up. But that will make it so the music comes through clearer. Because I mean, what Zoom does is it condenses it optimizes speaking voices, but not music. So when you turn on Original Sound, it will, the music will sound as it's intended, compared to sounding like a telephone call, for example. So that would be a setting, if you're using Zoom, I would also enable on your Zoom, because that would also drastically help the quality of the music that's being played through it. You're muted, Lynn, sorry.
So if I was to set up like an iPhone camera on the organist or the piano, the musician, and then have my computer in the Zoom meeting wherever I am in the preaching from, and then somebody else is in the back of the sanctuary, are we good? We're going to get the feedback if there are 3 of us like tuned into the Zoom meeting? How do we do?
So I think some of that would be trial and error, because I think some of you would have to be muted at certain points, or some of you would have to have your volume turned down so it's not projecting the sound back out.
Yeah.
And that's like 3-dimensional Jenga, or that's a 3-dimensional puzzle.
That's what I can't get my head around it. And then and then I use AirPods, which is going to be the Zoom sound, right?
Yeah.
I can't get my head. I can't figure out what I'm telling. But so I think it's just the trial and error.
I sit with a paper and I'm trying to diagram it all out.
Yeah. Funny story. I was doing communion this Sunday, and I have a little bit bigger thing, and I stand up to do it. And I was in the middle of it. So I was on that autopilot where you know what you're saying, but you don't really know exactly where you are. My husband opened my office door over there to walk in, because he was just going to take some bread and, right? And I stared at him and I froze. And he just like looked at me because he realized what he had done. And I had no idea where I was. I had the picture in my hand, so I knew I was somewhere.
Oh.
And it was live. So, so be it. It was, it was a moment.
Yeah.
For sound quality, I would just suggest that an iPad works a bit better than an iPhone.
What about an iPad versus a Mac?
Well, a Mac, in terms of sound quality, I'm not sure. Maybe Denise can answer that.
Okay.
I think it's more a matter of your headphone quality and your mic quality. Because I do what somebody does. I listen to my iPhone while I'm doing the service on a laptop, just so I can hear what they're hearing.
Yeah.
And, the phone tends to be a little tinny, but I think overall it has more to do with your mic and headphones than the instrument itself.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah. And sorry, I didn't mean to step on you before, Dorinda, but were you going to say something similar, or?
Yeah, I was just, we discovered the original sound button when we were trying to figure things out, and it did help. When also knowing that Zoom doesn't let you unmute people at will now, that we did set up, everyone had a PC except for the person who had a Mac that was using that was over by where the piano was playing, and so we had to have someone go back and forth to like unmute that person because we're like, oh no, wait, it's muted. So that was a glitch we realized in the middle. But I was just going to share the original sound toggle. We found that, and that did help with our trial and error. So yeah, thanks, Casey.
Yeah, Marjorie.
I'm sorry, I got a phone call that I needed to take, so I missed the original sound. What is that again? Can you just explain?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, if you Google like Zoom original sound, it'll show you how to enable it on your account. But what it does is, so if you're playing the piano, it makes the piano sound more or less you would hear it,
Okay.
compared to it sounding a little more tinny, because Zoom will compress the audio to optimize it for speech, but it doesn't do a great job for music.
Got it.
So original sound preserves the music better.
So would that need to be toggled on and off during the service, or is it something that you would just flip on and leave?
You could flip it on and leave it on, or you could go back and forth, but you know, so it may be easier to leave it on.
But a preference is for audio, I think. It'll ask for computer
So
sound.
like right now on my Zoom screen, since I have it turned on, it's in the top left, right? The top left corner. You know, I think you know, thinking, you know, people are sharing some live stream stories, and you know, it reminds me of back in the beginning when doing communion, and I'm live on Facebook, and I go to make a wide gesture, and I swing a chalice of grape juice off the table, and I'm in my house, so you know, it's now everywhere, and I'm just sort of looking at it, and I'm like, you know, you freeze, but you got to keep going. So and I'm there with a towel with my feet trying to but we'll all have stories like that, I'm sure, to share. But well, you know, I just want to say that, you know, if any of you want to have conversations more, feel free to reach out to me. Also, that I've started making some trips out now to churches if they need, you know, if they want to do in-person consultation or helping with setup. If you're on the other side of the river, perhaps if there's a group of you, we can set something up. Just, well, yeah, logistically it's a little farther away, so if there was a group of people on the other side of the river, that would be helpful for me at least. But I've been starting to make some more of those trips because I find it's easier to have those conversations in person than over Zoom. So just wanted to throw that out there, and throw the last word to Hudson River Presbytery, who changed their name to Deb.
Casey, thank you so much. Again, we are so grateful to have Casey and his skill set with us now, 20 hours a week, and with his amazing abilities to create boundaries, I hope, because it could certainly be a long, much more time than 20 hours a week. But his number one priority is reaching out to congregations. So please don't hesitate to email or call And Casey will get back to you and help you with whatever it is that you need in this new world. It's fascinating to me, and I said this to the last group, the group that met on Monday, where we were in March versus look at us now. Now we're all wondering how we can do this in a hybrid way. In March, we were first responders. Going, chaotic. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And I suspect that very few of us thought we would still even be having this conversation right now in September. It's the rare congregation, I think, that will not continue to do this, I hope, as we go forward into the future. You don't want to lose this piece. So however we end up in a year or 9 months or 6 months, if we're all back into the sanctuary, I would hope that this would be an option for folks to reach others who cannot be there at 10 or 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And particularly for your shut-ins, we're all shut-ins now, so there really is no such thing anymore, that we can reach out to others. And I'm very appreciative of your ability to, your resilience, your ability to go from first responders into, oh my God, what are we doing? Into more of a, okay, now what? Okay, how are we going to move forward in the future? And that's why Casey is here, to help us do that. So I thank you very, very much. And I look forward to seeing you at the Presbytery meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah, and if you haven't applied, if you haven't done your grant yet, there's still time for that. So
Good heavens, yes. There's not a deadline. So if you have not applied for your grant money, do that. Thank you all.